All right, guys. By both clocks now, it is 2 o'clock. I would love to go ahead and get started. I am so excited for you guys to hear from Pamela Grow. She has been one of the most influential people in my kind of learning about the nonprofit world. I started reading her blog 8 years ago almost,
Wow.
and I am totally thrilled that she is here with us today. Before we get started, I just wanted to introduce myself. If you aren't familiar with me, my name is Abby Jarvis. I'm part of the team over at QGive. If you've never heard of QGive, which is totally a thing that happens all the time, we are an online fundraising platform. And what we're really passionate about is helping nonprofits raise more money. And part of that is knowing how to do things like build a donor communication plan. And that's why we have these webinars. That's why we bring in experts like Pam, because she can teach us so much about how to fundraise and how to talk to our donors. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We are recording this webinar, and if you are here or if you registered, you're going to get an email from me probably tomorrow morning with a link to this recording, some of the slides that Pam has given us, and some other resources. So keep an eye out for that. If you have to leave early, you won't miss anything. We'll send you a complete recording. There is going to be time at the end to answer questions. So as the questions occur to you, drop them in the chat box. I will moderate those and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And then, of course, if you are on Twitter, I would really encourage you to follow Pam, and QGive on Twitter. Pamela posts amazing resources all the time. She posts really great commentary, lots of good insights. So if you are looking for a really solid voice in the fundraising world, I would really encourage you to follow her. That all being said, I am going to turn things over to Pamela. She has a ton of really great information to share with you today, and I cannot wait to hear what you learn from her.
Oh, thanks, Abby. You can see my screen now. Is there any way that I can see attendees' questions, or I know you're gonna monitor them for me, but
Yeah, GoToWebinar doesn't let you see those. But what I can do is write down all the questions so I can give them to you after the webinar, and then I will moderate those at the end, if that's okay.
Super. Thank you, and thank you for the awesome introduction. You are so cool. I love following you on Twitter too. And this whole everything that's going on right now, I mean, it's exposed us. I've been using GoToWebinar now for about 6 or 7 years, and I've been transitioning over to Zoom for our weekly free webinars that we have every Monday, but I'm kind of considering dropping Zoom. I've had so many issues with it. Maybe I'm just not used to it. I'm also getting a little crazy going back and forth between two platforms. So this is what I'm used to. So hey everybody, welcome. And thank you for that awesome introduction. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk today about how to create a donor communications plan that will see your nonprofit through any crisis. And I can tell you that this works because I've seen so many students going through what we're all going through right now with hardly a ripple. Actually, they're raising more than ever before. Abby introduced me. I am the author of Simple Development Systems, which is donor-centered fundraising made easy. It's pretty much donor-centered fundraising for the small shop, for the one-person development department. I'm also the founder of Basics and More, which is online training for nonprofits, and we pretty much teach everything that we're going to be going through today. In addition to that, I live in the Philadelphia suburbs. I am a mother to 2 daughters, one of which you see here, which is my Abby. She just graduated. I don't know if I told you about it, Abby. She just graduated via Zoom from Temple University's law school, Beasley School of Law, this last month. So that was pretty cool. And I like to bake. I like painting, reading, the various museums and gardens we have around Philadelphia area, and you guys. So how are you all doing right now? If you can just go ahead and type into the chat box just a couple words, 1 or 2 words. How are you doing? You know, it does feel like the whole world is closed right now, right? It's just kind of a weird feeling. I mean, I know that I was talking to some of my students. I had a webinar just before I got on this one, and they were saying that they feel like they're adapting now, that they're getting used to a routine, but it still feels a little off, you know, and now it feels like the whole country, the whole world is at a breaking point, really. So how do you feel about fundraising? And how do you feel, more importantly, how do you feel about fundraising right now? And is there anyone here on this webinar today who hasn't yet started fundraising since the whole shutdown? Go ahead and type into the questions or the chat box.
I'm
And
actually hearing from people who are chiming in that they're doing pretty well, and a lot of the people who are chiming in saying that they have been fundraising are surprised at how well and how
yes,
loyal people are being right now.
your donors are wonderful people. In today's webinar, we are going to talk about how consistent donor communications builds trust, how to ask for monthly gifts in a pandemic and really why, the importance of empathy and vulnerability in your communications right now, and really what that looks like. Because I know everybody's kind of been talking about it, but what does it actually look like? And your most important message. So why do I focus so much on donor communications? Here's the thing, your donor communications really drives your fundraising. They're really the engine behind everything you do. You know, I always see all these webinars about how to do a face-to-face ask and how to do this and how to do that. You know, when your donor communications are running like a well-oiled machine, you've actually primed your donor for that face-to-face ask, and you won't feel any fear, really. It is the engine behind your major donor program, your monthly donor program, and your legacy giving. It just all ties together. But there's always that board member who wants to know, you know, show me the money. How much did you raise lately? And I always like to start out with this because most people really don't know, if you're not in this, really don't know, right, where the money comes from. And I think it's always important to point out to board members who are asking you to, you know, write to Bill Gates for that $1 million grant, or even worse, you know, get a listing of the wealthiest donors in your region who have no knowledge of your organization, where the money actually comes from. Or how about we head up that bank? Corporations, 5%, bequest gifts, 9%, foundations, 18%. This is the latest research from Giving USA, and individuals give 68% of all philanthropic dollars. So almost 80% of all philanthropic giving comes directly from individuals. And to me, it's always told me where I want to focus my time and attention. Because where your attention goes, your time goes, right? And that's why it makes good sense to focus your time on your donor communications. And as if our current global situation wasn't enough, now there's also this issue of trust. And it's a really, really important one, because when you think about how trust nearly almost every institution has failed so much over the last few years. Education, trust in education, trust in our government, trust in religious institutions. You, nonprofits, we are really doing the work that holds our society together right now. And it's so important, more important than ever before, to maintain that trust, to maintain the public's trust. So this is from the Chronicle of Philanthropy, and it was an article about this recent, very extensive survey they did. They found that only 52% of Americans have faith that nonprofits will do what is right. So what can you do? What can you do to improve that? What can you do to make sure your donors trust you? A reputation built over time. Honesty and transparency. And research, ratings, and credentials. You know, that's your Charity Navigator rating. And you'll see that Charity Navigator ranking that we take such stock in, it really comes in last on the list. And I know that myself as a donor, and I am a donor to probably about anywhere from 50 to 100 nonprofits over the course of a year, I actually never check that. I know there are a handful of donors that it really means something, but I don't think it's a biggie. And really, if I'm going to be totally frank with you, the more consistent you are, the more you're going to build trust. And I always like to point out I'm surprised you read my newsletter for that long, Abby. I'm really honored. I started publishing a newsletter back in 2008. And I made one decision when I started, and that was that I was going to publish every single week regardless. And I was actually recovering from a hospitalization at the time, and I had lost my job. I'd been put on medical leave, and the only thing I was sure of was that it had to be consistent. I started out with probably 5 subscribers, and there were weeks when I did not want to put the time and effort into it, which was, you know, probably anywhere from 5 to 8 hours to put it together. But I forced myself to do it, and it's made a world of difference. And when you can commit to your donor communications program, to a really solid one, you're going to see tremendous growth. Trust me. And how simple can this be? Who here is not familiar with the Ask, Thank, Report, Repeat model? It always starts out with your stories, your core base of stories. And then we're going to go into the Ask, Thank, Report model, and then you repeat it over and over and over again. And the secret sauce, in my opinion, is the donor feedback and engagement piece. And it does take time, and it takes attention to detail, and attention, really, really specific attention to your data for all this to work. But how many times can you ask? How many times do you think you can ask in the course of a year? Any guesses? Anybody want to type in a number, a random number?
I've got one guess for 4.
4. Okay. So how can you ask, how many times can you ask a year without driving off your donors? I know that everybody always thinks about, I hear this a lot about donor fatigue. So Jeff Brooks shared this story. He was at actually the first nonprofit storytelling conference. And he said you could actually ask 20 times in the course of a year. This was according to his research with his own clients. And then another fundraiser, he said, took the floor to describe a test he'd done to see what the limit was. His nonprofit mailed 21 solicitations in a year before gifts actually tapered off. And keep in mind, these were actually all through the mail, direct mail. So are 21 solicitations, too much? Uh, another consultancy did, I think, said the magic number was something like 34. You're not a mega, billion-dollar nonprofit, I'm sure. You wouldn't be on this webinar. But what does that look like? Who likes examples here? I love examples. I'm going to show you quite a few examples in the course of this webinar. I've also included a downloadable PDF where I share quite a few other examples that you can take a look at and even download. But what does it look like for my students who are typically small to mid-sized nonprofits? So I wanted to share with you, it's a sample donor communications plan, and it's similar to many of our students. Typically when they come to me, they're sending out one direct mail appeal a year, usually a year-end appeal. And then they graduate to 3. Some of them have send out as many as 8 appeals a year. Donor print newsletter, 3. And keep in mind too that when your donor print newsletter is written according to a very, very, very specific formula, sometimes they actually end up raising even more than an actual fundraising appeal. So this is just a sample donor communications plan. And I do still focus a lot on direct mail, but also multi-channel, which is getting to be more and more and more important. And I think the important factor, as you can see from these statistics shared from our friend Steve McLaughlin over at Blackbaud, your best donors, ages 55 to 75, multi-channel really resonates with them. Look at those retention rates. Your whole purpose in your donor communications program and in your fundraising, you really want to take that donor from that first gift to lifetime. And what I thought was interesting about this as well was how the offline only, the direct mail, resonates so much with younger donors as well. And here's a super simple example from one of our students, from Cindy over at Community Link. This was her very first fundraising appeal. And she did send it out. It was her first fundraising appeal. I'm trying to remember if it was the organization's first, but I don't think it was. She did really, really well with this. And they did include an email appeal. I think it was a series of 5 emails, as well as posting on their social media, which at this point is pretty much, I think they use pretty much Facebook exclusively. But what about now? What about now in the middle of a global pandemic? How is this changing? How does this system change? So I wanted to show you an example here. And this is actually from Intervale Center. This is from someone who's been with us for a long, long time. They have been doing a Mother's Day appeal now for about 10 years. And it's always been a card. It's always done really well. They send out a card. They send out a little reply envelope. And so they had everything printed when COVID-19 hit. And they didn't skip a beat, you know. They turned around, Mandy, their development director, she just really enlisted board member staff to write personal notes on the inside of each card. And then they went to the printer. They had this little insert printed. I hope you all can read that. My only complaint was that it was kind of tough to read. And like a lot of you have reported, they actually did fantastic with this. They also had an email campaign that went out along with this. Again, it was 3 to 5 emails. And they also included all their social media accounts. And this is just my little reminder that the tool is never the plan. I think we get really lost in tool-centered thinking. I just saw a post yesterday on Facebook, someone asking about a certain platform, and it didn't have anything to do with what she was trying to do. We need to spend less time figuring out a platform and more time figuring out who our donors are and what they need to hear from us. And this was how Intervale integrated that particular campaign into their Instagram account. So we've been hearing a lot in our sector. I've seen it mentioned on webinar after webinar about how vulnerability is really, really important right now. And what does that mean? I would love it if you just went into the chat box and typed in, what does that mean for you? Vulnerability in donor communications and how we're talking to our donors right now. If you could read those, if we got any responses. Abby.
Yeah. Jackie chimed in and she said that honesty and transparency are really important. I really love what Christine typed in. She said that for them, it's admitting that they don't have all the answers right now. Terry
Yes.
chimed in and said that it's really important to be open and honest about the organization's situation, especially because things are changing so rapidly right now.
Mhm.
So that's got some really great answers coming in here.
Really great answers. You guys get it. That's awesome. I love this quote from Brene Brown. It sounds like truth and it feels like courage. Truth and courage aren't always comfortable, but they're never weakness. And I feel that very, very, very strongly. And I've seen some great communications coming out. But also the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change, which is exactly what we need right now. Here's an example that I had a client. We were working on actually their very first campaign. And we had the letter finalized. It hadn't gone to the designer yet, but it was finalized when COVID hit. And I wasn't sure if they would even want to go forward with it, but we retooled this letter and opened with empathy for our donors, for our readers. And she's quite frank there. When she thought about it, she considered not doing the campaign. This is another lovely example from, and I always make it a point to say, if you're a really small shop, and this is the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection. This is an organization that started out fiscally sponsored, and I think they just got their 501c3 status last year. And they're doing beautiful, beautiful donor communications, and they're a very small shop. I always advise people who are on any of my webinars to go over and sign up for their e-news because they're really lovely. So what is fundraising's holy grail? Is absolutely, without a question, donor loyalty. You know, we've got donor retention rates of about 45%. They never seem to get much better. But one thing that can make them much, much better is by growing your monthly giving program. Monthly donor retention rates are 90% and up. That's pretty unheard of. Your younger donors are very open to monthly giving. The average monthly gift is $24 or $288 a year. Who here has a monthly giving program? What's more, the lifetime value of 100 sustainers, and this is from Harvey McKinnon's brand new book, just came out, I think last month? How to Create Lifelong Donors Through Monthly Giving. It's a new book from Emerson and Church. Highly, highly recommend it. And this little chart is from his brand new book. Just 100 sustainers. The total lifetime value is $170,000. And guess what? That doesn't even include legacy giving. And your loyal donors are usually your legacy givers. So this is an email that lands in my inbox a lot. We began monthly giving 2 years ago, but it's slow to take off. The thing is, with monthly giving that you have to keep in mind, you really, really, really have to work it, right? Let me grab my notes here. You really, really have to work it. You can't just put a checkbox up on your online form and expect your donors to come. It's not one of those things. If we build it, if we build it, they will come. You have to push it over and over and over again. So we go back to our sample donor communications plan, and you can see we've got 3 monthly giving specific asks factored in a year. And most of my students actually do anywhere between 5 and 8 campaigns, mini campaigns, that are devoted strictly to monthly giving. And again, I'm gonna go back to Intervale because they actually ran their monthly giving campaign this year. Well, one of them, they do several. They ran it in alongside the other campaign. So they did monthly giving and regular. They did a real strong monthly giving ask. They posted it to all their social channels, and they grew their monthly giving tremendously. This is one of our recent students who was actually, she's just in the process of growing her donor comms plan. She's with an organization that only had 1 appeal, and that was their year-end appeal. It was not very donor focused, and she's been taking over everything and remaking everything. So this year she had a spring appeal scheduled, and when COVID hit, her boss, who had previously okayed everything that she's ever proposed, all of a sudden she said no. She absolutely balked at fundraising right now. So Jody Joy put together this letter, took it to her boss. I think she got approval and they got this letter out in the course of a weekend. Again, she really stressed that it was difficult for her to actually fundraise right now. But then she remembered the donor's commitment. And she knew that their loyal donors would want to know how they're doing. They provided this with this letter, they provided their donors with a lot of reassurance, a lot of trust. And they shared their own story, how COVID-19 is affecting them. And they were also, you can see this is probably one of the softest asks I've ever seen. But it's been out 3 weeks now. The campaign hasn't even closed, and they're all already 400% over goal. So what's the most important thing in your donor comms? The absolute most important thing. What's more, how can you raise an extra $45.32 with every gift? Learning to say thank you and how you say thank you is so, so, so important. It's often overlooked. This is from a study from Jen Shang and Adrian Sargent, Learning to Say Thank You, the Role of Donor Acknowledgements. They found that those who received the thank you actually gave on average $45.32 more than those who didn't receive the thank you. Why would you want to miss out on the opportunity of sending a beautifully written thank you letter? It makes such a huge difference. Huge, huge, huge. A receipt is never a thank you. I wanted to share this particular thank you that I got after I gave a gift to Trocare, is a little Irish, not so little, Irish charity, and they're working on overcoming the challenges of poverty and injustice. And the good work that can happen now because you chose to give. Thank you. It's hard for me to capture just what it means. Moments of grace and mercy. I mean, this is really beautiful. You can do a lot with email. But what about direct mail? I wanted to share this particular letter with you because it's from Julie Edwards over at the Humane Society of North Georgia. And this is a great letter, right? I would love to get this letter in the mail. And I think what this is a great example of is that it shows you that even the best letter can be improved upon and why it is so important. Now this is the rewritten letter. This was actually this is from Lisa Sargent, who participated in one of our classes. And if you go back here, you'll see these are small points, but they make a huge difference in terms of readability. But with you, everything changed. And it's super important to get a thank you letter out, even now. I know it's harder, but it's just as important, especially if you're not sending thank you letters to your online donors, which I think the retention rate, the last I saw was right around 23% for online donors. So today we talked about how consistent donor communications builds trust, how to ask for monthly gifts in a pandemic, the real importance of empathy and vulnerability in your donor communications, and your most important message. So I don't know if Abby sent this on, but we have a Your 7 communications pieces PDF. This is what I tell you to do right now. Download this, make a plan for growing your monthly giving program, how you're going to do it in 2020, and hop on the phone and call at least 5 donors just to say thank you. And I'm going to close out with this, which I don't know if everybody has seen this already, but it really impressed upon me, and open the floor to any kind of questions you might have.
I love this. It is a really great thing to keep in mind as everyone is working through their various
I
uh,
know.
challenges. It's so good.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being the change. I hope we have some questions.
We do. Everyone, I've got a couple questions already, but do feel free to drop questions in there. The one that someone asked is they asked if you could share the name of the monthly donor book that you mentioned earlier. I think there is some interest in that book and people want to read it.
Here's the thing. I think that the book, because of COVID-19, I think it's only available from the publisher right now.
Okay.
Where is it? Oh, I got it right here. How to Create Lifelong Donors Through Monthly Giving. It's by Harvey McKinnon. He also wrote the book that I used to start my first monthly giving program. I think it was, oh my gosh, it must have been like 20 years ago. Hidden Gold, I think was the name of it. And let me see. Erica Wasdorp also has another great book that's just fabulous.
Oh, she's great.
She is fabulous. And definitely, if you're working on starting your monthly giving program, definitely sign up for her weekly e-news because that is her sole focus.
If some of you are interested, and you can let me know if you are or aren't, if you are interested in additional resources around building a monthly giving program, whether you have one and want to expand it, or if you don't have one and want to build one, Erica Wasdorp, the woman that you just mentioned, did a webinar with us earlier this year or sometimes last year. The weeks are all blurring together. I will send that webinar out in the follow-up email. So we did have a couple of questions. Yes, Terry, we will send these resources in tomorrow's email. I'll send you the Erica Wasdorp webinar, and then I'll send you the books that Pamela mentioned. So Pamela, just to make sure I have it written down right, the book was How to Create Lifelong Donors by Harvey McKinnon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Exactly.
I will find that for you. I'll try to provide a link. I know lots of you use Amazon. If you're into Amazon, if you don't want to use Amazon, I'll try to find the publisher's book or the publisher's thing
Send
as
it
well.
over to you. It's Emerson and Church. That was my
Emerson.
understanding. I had talked to Harvey recently, and I think that because of COVID, they didn't actually have books available on Amazon yet.
Okay. So one question that I am curious about. So I know thanking your donors regularly is so important, and it is the biggest way to keep them coming back. How do you regularly thank your monthly donors without coming across as repetitive?
That's such a great question. Um, I know I was a donor once to the National Humane Society, and every month I'd get the same email. Um,
I did too. From an organization for over a year, I got the same email every month.
the best way is just to create little ways to make them feel important. Like, for instance, looking at this, where is it? Looking at this sample donor communications plan. When you send out your print donor newsletter, you're going to segment those, go to donors only. You're going to segment out your monthly donors, and you'll write a special little note just for them, a special letter thanking them, even a handwritten note, kind of depending on how many you've got. Um, you might do a special, like a small gift once a year, special updates that are just for them. There's really all kinds of ways you can do it. When you do your direct mail asks, when you do your campaigns, you'll do a special campaign that's just for your monthly donors, because they will give in addition to their monthly gift.
Perfect. That is really helpful. I know that is something that has been a question that has come up multiple times with when QGIve users are setting up their monthly giving program. So that is really helpful, and I'll make sure we talk about that in blog articles or anything else. Most of the questions here that we have left are around things like the resources you're going to send out tomorrow. So Pam, I was going to ask you if you were going to suggest any resources for people who want to learn more about building a communications plan or want more examples, where can we point them?
Well, I actually do have pretty regular series called What's in My Mailbox and What's in My Inbox, that is not just email communications, but also all kinds of digital fundraising. So we have examples all the time, but also I would recommend them refer them to Sophie,
Hmm.
SOFII.org. That's Ken Burnett's site. There are some fabulous examples there. Trying to think what else I refer to regularly. I refer to my own mailbox.
And that's a good way to do it.
Well,
I know,
it's funny
especially.
because I knew this guy once that had worked with this man who started a nonprofit that grew to be a several $1 million organization. And he started out, it was just him, and all he would do would be to collect the mail that came from charities and to review it and see what kind of appealed to him and what resonated with him. And he created this massive swipe file and grew the organization.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
But I love good examples. I mean, I learn as much from examples as I do from a good teacher. And my favorite teachers are probably Tom Ahern and an oldie you might not have ever heard of because I think he's retired now, but Mal Warwick is excellent.
What was that name? I'll send that one out in the email as well.
Mal Warwick, Warwick.
Okay, awesome. Okay. So everyone, I will send Mel Warwick and Tom Ahern and Erica Wasdorp and all of these other resources that you can use to either build out a donor communications plan or build up your recurring program. Pamela has left you with a ton of examples today. I will also show you how to get more information from her with lots of examples. If you do have any questions, feel free to reach out to us at marketing@qgift.com. I check those emails and we'll see it, so I can try to get you an answer if you need one. Other than that, do please keep an eye out for our follow-up email tomorrow. It will include all of these resources. It will include a link to other upcoming webinars that you might find interesting. And hopefully, as you leave today, you're a little more encouraged about what to do next with your fundraising. I know many of you mentioned that you were stressed at the beginning. I hope you feel less stressed. I hope you feel more confident. And I hope you will keep an eye out for a follow-up email. Pamela, thank you so much for all of the information you shared with us today. It was so useful. I loved seeing all the examples of how people are communicating with donors even through a really unusual time. And I really appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And everybody stay safe and stay
Yeah,
safe.
stay safe. Stay safe, everybody. All right, we will talk to you very soon. Everyone have a great Thursday. Goodbye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.